was in B, so that's a delight. I'll put that a bit further away. Okay, apologies for absence.
Councillor Dryden is on mayoral duty.
And I've got Councillor Ashwood. Any others? No? Lovely. Declarations of interest, ladies and gentlemen. I will remind you that you can declare those interests at any time during the meeting as we proceed, should you so desire. Minutes from the last meeting, pages 5 and 22, 5 to 22, everyone in possession of those?
Yeah, I've got possession, I just want to raise a query on them.
Yeah, please. Matters arising in item 4 anyway. Matters arising from those minutes that are not already on the agenda in front of us.
I just want to query on the minutes. On page 21, the awarding of 106 development money, I did ask for it to be minuted that the £25,000 with evolving to the Greek Orthodox Community Church is actually located in East area. And I haven't got a problem with that as long as that other areas can contribute to this area when we need funding as well. So I'd just like it to be minuted that that is actually in the East area and not in the South area.
Any other comments? Item 4 minutes? No? Going once? Okay. That takes us very swiftly to item 5, open forum, and that is where the public get to ask questions that we will try to answer, or at least if we can't answer today, perhaps find a source where we can at some alternative time. I've got 4 in front of me at the moment, and so we'll take them in order that they were given to me. So, Mr. Carpenter, you have the first 2 questions as you are the fastest to deliver them.
Tilting upwards, right. Do I have a microphone, please?
You're welcome to use this one if you like.
Question number 1, Mr. Chairman, relates to a case I was chasing up throughout 2014-2015 regarding getting young people involved in local democracy. And it's related in particular to Netherhall School, where this committee repeatedly, and I think Councillor Mefta was one of the councillors who wrote to the school, to encourage young people to get involved and encourage the school to invite councillors to visit and meet the students there, and kind of repeating what was done very successfully by East Area Committee. I wondered if there's been any further follow-up from those inquiries, or whether anything's been done by South Area Committee to try and get those visits organised. Thank you.
Okay. You go first if you like, Councillor Mefta.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah.
No, it's not my way.
Sorry, Amanda.
Thank you. Netherhall School's been going through a period of transition over the last few years, as some of you will know. And the woman who was head of the school at the time when the area committee was in touch has left, and Bottisham Village College has been offering support to Netherhall over the last 18 months, just over a year. At present, they're still in a bit of a transition while they decide who the new head will be. However, I can say that the school has been more open with the community. In fact, Councillor Moore and I were invited in, along with the local police officers, to discuss road safety with the school following the accident on Queen Edith's Way at the beginning of the year. And I think there is now a much more open environment. I think it would probably be a good idea to wait until the new head going forward is confirmed and then start again with our approaches. But I think the door is definitely open now.
I often bring it up on the door with young people, and there's one of 2 responses, either to say "Mum," or to engage. And it's quite often engaged. They're interested. They're very interested in what the issues are. I talk about local politics and how it fits together. I always put time in if they're willing. And they are right for it. There's lots of them who are very interested. So I completely agree with you. It's a worthwhile pursuit. Our future depends on these younger ones starting to ask questions about what this committee does and how that gets done and why hasn't this been done and so on.
I just want to know what is the solution there. I mean, if the kids, they're open, they want to see us and all that, who is stopping them? Is it the head? Or who is, I mean, you said it's all changed now, so I just don't know.
I think if we had a debate on something that was of interest to young people and invited them along, then that would be the best approach, Chair. In all fairness, I don't think an environmental report that we have on tonight's agenda would be of a great deal of interest to young people. But, you know, if we were doing something like, you know, cycle lanes or sports facilities, then I think that would be great. But I think we need to wait for our topic and then issue an invitation. Be interested to hear what the people think about that.
Councillor Ashford, did you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when I was acting Chair, this topic came up on several occasions and I wrote repeatedly and never received a reply. So like Councillor Taylor said, we cannot go into these schools and colleges by force. We need to be invited in. So all I can repeat is that we're only too willing to go along and engage with the students. Not necessarily do they have to come out at night here. Most of us can find time during the day. They have an active sixth form as well. So I'm sure if people want us to go along, we're here to go and speak to them. So I would say back to you, Mr. Carpenter, if you've got a route in for us, then by all means give us the invitation and we can come along and speak on a topic that they want us to speak on. So we don't have to try and find one to engage them with. Let them give us the topic they want to debate with us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, have I missed somebody? Oh, sorry, Tim.
I have another bite. The most important thing that they need is a council, because it's not party political what they're interested in. It's the basics of how things get done. And I'm sure all of us will be willing, or any one of us will be willing to go and talk on virtually any subject. So it's not lack of will on our part at all.
Councillor Pippa, all the way down the end.
That's right. Can I also say that it's not just Netherhall, we've got other schools in our area, and we also work with the heads of the Sixth Form College and the Homerton College, and try to keep the door open and be approachable by the whole student world, if you like. But I just wanted to add that as well. Thanks.
I know I keep harping back on this, but when I was first councillor, a little while ago, we did speed dating, political speed dating, and it worked really well. It was an evening at Long Road, and you had, I think it was about 2.5 minutes with each person. You moved around, just as sort of normal speed dating. Perhaps something like that might be a great way for people to be able to ask the questions that they're particularly interested in, and then if there are particular themes, then perhaps we could go along for an assembly or something similar to be able to engage people. So these are the particular hot points that came up, hot topics. Would you like to know more about them? But I think it did work very well, the fact that they got that little bite and then you're able to give them information and say, actually, I can get back to you, these are my details, and it worked quite well.
Okay, the speed dating is very interesting because I remember some time ago at CRC we had something very similar there, and there was a number of councillors turned up to that, and the students got a chance to vote on the councillor that they thought was most effective and contacted them and communicated with them in the most effective way. And who do you think won that? John Hipkin won that.
Oh no!
And they loved him. And so it showed, I mean, the oldest councillor there by a long way, and they absolutely loved him, and John Hickman won that by a mile. So it showed that age was no barrier there, and so it was a very successful event. And I guess if the one of the area committees, I mean, such as this evening, it's a fairly light agenda. I guess if there was another evening such as this, we could arrange something like that and invite schools in and have, or a school, Netherhall, or whoever, and have something quite similar to that, because they do enjoy it and they are very engaging. So there's some good ideas there. Does that help you along?
The thing that I really want to push on with institutions in Cambridge is to get some long-term improvements or change in the DNA of the institutions. So, for example, you've all given examples of something that has worked, but these have all been one-offs. What I want to see is something that is annual, where it becomes almost automatic that, for example, there will be, for example, in the run-up to the local council elections, one of the schools hosting a question time event, and that within the DNA of the school's calendar, there will be an expectation that the school would then put on and host that event and make their facilities available, because I think one of the things that I've often had from councillors and political parties is, quite understandably, they've not felt that it's their responsibility to actually organise the events, it's their responsibility to turn up. The question is, who does the organising of the events? I think with the exception of general election years, where everybody invites all of you, it's very difficult to find what's the most appropriate route to go about doing that. Because when I was at Netherhall many moons ago, we had one talk from then Councillor Heathcote, and that was it. That was the only engagement we had with local government, and the impression that we got at the time was that you weren't interested in us. And it's something that stuck for a very, very long time, because it was him doing the politics talk for about half an hour, and that was it. Now, mine was the last generation of the ignorant, if I can put it that way. A couple of years later, the internet exploded, and we are in a very, very, very different world as a result. But I don't get the sense that the institutions, whether it's schools, public bodies, local authorities, or even service providers such as we have with Stagecoach here, just collectively the culture, I don't feel has yet changed. That's something that I think, given the reputation we have as a city, needs to change to reflect our international profile. Thank you.
Well, I'm quite happy on the from the chair's perspective to send a letter to the hall, as that's the one we're actually speaking about. But as Councillor Taylor has said, there may be not quite the right time for that. But
there's an acting head at the moment.
It
might end up being the head later. But
sure, it could still be worth our while. Quite happy to carry on. I know Councillor Ashton tried it a couple of times. There's no reason why we couldn't do it again. Let's do it. Yeah, happy to do that.
Okay.
Oh, you have a second question?
Yeah, this is a very, very hyper-local one, if I can put it. It's an issue just up the road that doesn't seem to be going away. And it's to do with... Sorry, just switch the camera around again. It's to do with the local co-op at the Mark building, which I regularly slag off online because it's a horrible building, but it's there. The problem is the lack of decent cycle parking facilities for students at Hillsroad Sixth Form College. The problem being for the students, because there are so many students on such a cramped site, there's not enough cycle parking on site for the students who want to cycle into college to park their bikes. And so as a result, they're either they're trying to park them just in any space possible, and it's causing congestion in and around that part of the very busy junction of Hills Road, Cherry Hinton Road. Now, given over the next 18 months, 2 years, we're going to see the opening of the Chisholm Trail, the north-south cycle route, I can guarantee you that there will be an increase in the number of students who are going to be cycling, not just to Hills Road, but also to Long Road Sixth Form College, coming from those northern villages. And so if we leave things as they are, that problem is going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. Hence why I think there's an onus on everyone, whether councillors, the landowners and the sixth-form colleges, to basically say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's something that this committee needs to have a discussion with Mrs Sinclair, the principal of Hills Road, to say, over the next few years it's going to get worse, so how are we going to deal with it?
Anybody wish to...
I'll just...
Oh, yeah, sure.
It really dovetails in with the last question we're asking. I don't believe we've received a letter from the principal, the South area, complaining about lack of cycle parking. So we're not mind readers. So it would be helpful if she could write to the South Area Committee, pointing out exactly what the need is in terms of numbers, and then we can make a proper investigation. We can promise anything tonight, but until we know the proper details, it would be pointless. And the cycle parking nowadays is so much different than it was years ago. We've seen that where you get these ones where you can park 3 up high, what have you, and these students are quite fit and robust. So I'm sure that if they actually tell us the numbers they're looking for, we could have a proper meeting together with the cycling czar from the county to see what we could do regards helping on this cycling issue. But again, they need to get in touch with us to say they've got a major issue, it's causing antisocial behaviour problems, what can you do to help us out? It's like I say, it seems to be the wrong way around sometimes, that we have to be mind readers.
Was it a response to this?
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
if I may, Mayor? Or perhaps people can hear me. But I'm not entirely sure why she'd be concerned, because it's going to be a financial issue for them. The problem is for the public.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a planning issue, because they've obviously extended their facilities. Presumably that's to allow for growth. Was there any requirement that they should have adequate facilities behind, as in parking? And I'm particularly concerned that planning didn't require the trees outside the co-op and the mark to be protected, because those poor trees have bike locks festooned around them all the time. So it is a big issue and it does need to be addressed, but I'm not entirely sure that the principal would be interested in drawing attention to it.
Okay, Tim, please.
Quick draw. The obvious thing is to go and talk to them and see. We have a cycle park problem at the station. We have had. It's been particularly bad. That's starting to be relieved now. But if the students are festooning that area, we should be encouraging the school to put a proper cycle parking on the school facilities. They keep bringing things to the planning committee. Of course, the cycle parking isn't necessarily part of the conditions that you can put on, whether they can have lights on an all-weather pitch and so on. But it can certainly be brought up if someone goes to talk to him, and I'm happy, or her, I'm happy to go and talk and see, just bring up the issue.
Okay, obviously I didn't know this question was going to come today, that's the fun of it, isn't it? But I think, as far as I'm concerned, again, quite happy to, I do know the principal from times gone by, quite happy to, if we write to her and say that this question has been brought here, do you have any ideas, do you have any solutions, rather than we couldn't impose anything on them, it's a matter for the school. But there's no reason that we couldn't say, how can we help? And I don't know a tremendous amount about what funding might be available, but we could, in a separate letter, I'm just thinking on my feet here, write to Mike Davis, who's the cycle man, as I'm sure you all know, and we could say, hey Mike, would there be any funding available to help the school? I don't know if there would or not. Obviously we can't make promises here, I don't know enough about it.
Throw it as a challenge.
But there's nothing wrong with actually writing to Mike and saying what would be available, how do you think we could work with the school, not just that one, but we're talking about this particular school. How can we work with them? Is there any funding available? If so, how can it be released? What's the best way of handling this? Perhaps between the three, I guess, between Linda and Mike and perhaps myself or whoever decides if Tim wants to find that out, that's absolutely fine. And perhaps between us, I don't know what the solutions will be, what the outcome will be, but we can at least be talking to each other, can't we? And quite happy to do that. Let's see what comes out at the other end.
Student engagement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put it as a challenge to the students.
Yeah,
So let's just make a really trivial point.
No, I'm sure it's not.
That both the Sixth Form College and the Mark are not actually in the South area.
No.
Yeah, so just,
No, I did know that.
yes, I was wondering if anything was...
I did know that, but I thought I was going to be churlish just to...
Yeah, but no, I just wondered if the problem had arisen at whatever else area committee that's in.
Yeah. I
They
just...
do affect the South area.
Sorry?
They do affect the South area.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. So I'm quite happy to... But it's a fair point, but I thought it'd be a bit churlish to throw out.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if it had arisen at the other, whatever area it is.
No, which
Yes,
area
you
is
probably
it?
know, is it?
The east area,
Yeah,
It's on that border.
it's just...
Yeah.
Coleridge Ward.
Yeah.
And I guess we could work with the East Area Chair. Yeah, why not? It's always good to talk, isn't it? You never know what will come out of that.
But kind
Okay.
of as a general point, local residents such as myself, I personally don't care what the boundaries are.
Which is why I didn't say it in the first
So-
place. That's exactly why I didn't say it. You have a question?
I have a question, and actually it sort of relates to this, because it's about free commuter parking in the area, because it really is a huge problem where I live, and quite a lot of it seems to be generated by sixth form students, and partly they're young, they're inexperienced, and they're not really terribly good drivers. But the general question is that free commuter parking in the area distorts traffic flows, creates unnecessary congestion and pollution. And I just think we need to start really concentrating on what we can do to resolve it before it distorts all the rest of the decisions that we're making about traffic flows and traffic patterns and so on. And a related issue is getting swiping onto the buses, because having the buses stop and for the drivers to turn into conductors all the time creates yet more congestion and distorted traffic flows.
One for Mr. Campbell later, perhaps.
Hmm?
Anybody wish to take that one up?
I can comment on residents parking if you'd like me to, Chair. So,
That's just what I was going to do, but please, yeah, that will save me from...
yeah, there is a move within the area for a resident... Sorry, can you hear me? You can probably hear me better now. There is a move amongst residents campaigning for residents' parking schemes in the area opposite the Sixth Form College and Homerton College. It's quite a divisive issue because about 2/3 of the people in the area very much want residents' parking, and the other third who express an opinion are not convinced yet. The officers, following a meeting in this very room with about 60 residents earlier in the month, the officers are working up proposals to put to people in the area. And if residents decide to vote for residents' parking, then that would be able to go ahead. I think, Mrs. Marion, you're absolutely right when you say that free parking encourages car traffic, because if you know it's easy to park somewhere, then hey-ho, why not take your car in? If you know there isn't anywhere to park, then you may consider public transport or cycling or other options. We are working on it in this area. Throughout the city as a whole, the area traffic committee has been considering residents parking as part of parking policy in the city generally. And the officers are working on convening a working party of councillors to define the terms of the review. I'm afraid that's happening rather slowly, so I can't give you any news on when the date of that meeting will be, but it is in train.
Thank you.
Any more comments? That's sort of what I was going to say, so...
Right.
No, it's my item.
Okay, not a definitive answer, but it's not an easy one to solve, is it? Mr. Woodburn, the floor is yours.
Right, thank you. Now you'll see, if you've got any of you who've got copies of the minutes, you will see on page 7, halfway down, that at the last meeting in December, I raised the question of when the 20-mile-an-hour limit would come into effect on Chillington Road. 11th of December was the expected implementation date. I raised the matter on the 14th of December, and am very frustrated, or which puts it rather mildly, at the fact that apparently nothing at all has happened. We did say the head of streets and open spaces would respond to my question, but I've heard not a single word. And I wondered why we haven't got a report at this meeting, and I wondered also why we haven't got a report on what is mentioned, not by me, but on the next page, where Andy Campbell was to be invited to come to speak to the meeting. Why is he not here? I mean, it is ridiculous if these things go on for months and months and months. Now, if I could speak a little bit more about the 20-mile-an-hour limit. I mean, we do have at the moment, I mean, I live on Cherryhinton Road, and just close to where the speed camera is. And every Friday and Saturday night, there is a nightmare situation with cars speeding back after people have been drinking in town, dining and drinking in town, speeding back down Cherryhinton Road. You'll note that that is the time when the local pastors in the town centre go out on Friday and Saturday nights in order to kind of help those who are lying drunk in the streets. It's also the time when there is a major traffic menace. And what I want to see is how on earth can we get some enforcement of speed limits, I mean not just the 20-mile-an-hour ones, but other ones too, on Friday and Saturday nights between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., which is the relevant period. But now to come specifically to 20-mile-an-hour limit, we have in Cambridge, as I think almost everybody here will be aware, we have a greater number of pedestrians and of cyclists in the city than anywhere else in the UK. We're wholly exceptional in this respect. In London, yes, Oxford Street has that kind of proportion of pedestrians, but in London, in general, it is nothing like the percentage that it is in general in Cambridge. Now, what that means is that our right to a 20-mile-an-hour limit is stronger than, I believe, than anywhere else in the country if we're going to keep our streets reasonably safe. And I've attended two inquests where cyclists have been killed in Cambridge by left-turning vehicles over recent years. And it is really important that people are aware of the hazards in Cambridge, which would be much reduced if we can get this 20-mile-an-hour limit brought into effect. Now, I know it's a complicated matter because the police are involved as well as the local authorities. But if there's enough pressure from local authorities, the police commissioner is strongly in favour of 20 miles an hour, and I have no idea what his successor's views will be, but the likely successor, who's Huntingdon based, has pressed for 20 mile an hour limits to be enforced in Huntingdon. So really, there is an awareness of the issue, but somehow or other, it's got to be more publicised and emphasised, it seems to me, by councillors. And other cities in the UK, now I can't be more specific on this because I don't have the facts, but there are other cities which actually have implemented 20 miles an hour, and on a city-wide basis. And we're not going to get any sense in Cambridge until the patchwork of different limits is resolved, and we get 20 mile an hour where we get on all of the city boundaries, we get a clear notice saying this is a 20 mile an hour city. Anyway, that's my view, and I don't want to talk any longer. I've said enough. I hope that I can secure some agreement from the rest of you about this issue.
Thank you for that. I think I've got most of that. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. The hold-up isn't the agreement. The agreement the councillors are unanimous across the whole of the city. The hold-up is now the speed at which each of the patches can be done. The resources, in other words, in the city council to do it. So that's very frustrating. We've been on about it for quite a while. It leads to all sorts of stupidities where you turn off a speed-reduced Jerry Hinton Road onto a school road, and it's up, and there's a big sign saying you can now go 30. You know, there's loads of nonsense. So it's not through lack of pushing, asking, and jumping up and down, but the resources are limited in the city council who are actually doing the work. So that was one of your questions. Another of them was about the speeders. We have quite a lot of speeders in all sorts of places. Police are now very happy for us to do community speed watch. And the council, at this last budget, has put additional speed cameras, handheld or special speed cameras that the community can use. It just takes a few of you to jump up and down and get a little group together and get training. The training's free, it's very easy, the process is very easy, the people are very nice who do it. Deco would probably do it for you as a very friendly bloke. The training is either on site or in on Parker's Piece. So that is a very good route to take. You know the police are being squeezed very hard as well. The mechanism that Speedwatch uses is to record the speed of individual speeders and to inform the police. You don't do anything about it apart from to record the speed that they were going and the number plate. The police then write to the offender and warn them, and if it carries on more than once or twice, the offender gets quite a nasty and so on. So that is probably the best way of dealing with that. But I completely agree with you. Why aren't the lights picking up? The speed cameras picking these up.
The speed camera in Sherrington Road appears not to be working and not to have worked for a long while.
Well, perhaps that's something that we can take up with the police if it's not working. But that's really dangerous for that. Was there anything else that you asked? Well, those were the two main points, I think, weren't they?
I want also some action as regards meeting like this about reporting back. What's the point of raising questions if there's no report back? And it would be good if the head of streets and open spaces has come, and also if we got some police response. Why the police here not pressing to have the situation resolved as it has been in some other UK cities?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, sure.
The response is, each time, it's lack of resources. It's not the police responsibility to implement our plan. It's our responsibility in the City Council to tell the police which roads we're doing next, for the police then put out the requisite notices to the public, and we then can do it as a City Council. So it is, they keep coming back. I've had several goes at them, and it's the same response each time. It's a lack of resource to do it all in one go quickly.
But the police are not.
Through the chair, if you don't mind. Thank you. Otherwise we'll be bouncing around all over the place. Thank you. George, did you wish to speak?
I think to answer your question about Cherry Hinton Road, yes, the answer, we haven't got an answer for you. I remember you asking that question, and I remember asking contributing towards that. I did put a written question to the leader on Thursday, asking him when this is going to be in place. I also asked the leader of the council, when are we going to have the 20-mile speed limit implemented in Queen Edith, following the terrible accident we had outside the school. Unfortunately, my question was question number 20 and it was never answered. But I was promised I would get a written response to my question. So I do apologize, we cannot answer your question. But I'm under the impression, once we implement the 20 mile an hour in Cherry Hinton, which is College Ward, Cherry Hinton Road, which is College Ward, in Queens and in Cherry Hinton, presumably somebody will come up and say, right, we need to change the cameras. And the cameras will be the last thing to be changed. Currently you have 20 miles an hour down Cherry Hinton Road, and Hartington Road is just 30 miles an hour, which is all the side streets, but I think it's a temporary, it's an interim problem. Once the program gets rolled out, and I think the person who implements it is the county council rather than the city council, or am I wrong? Who are the people who fix the signs on the roads? County, yes. So as soon as it's implemented, then we're going to go and fix the cameras. I do apologise for not giving you an answer. We don't have an answer either.
Councillor Avery.
It's a point for you, Chair, actually. I guess maybe the next meeting we have the police local priority setting, maybe we should check this as potentially one of the priorities we want to ask about.
Already in my notes.
Very good. But I'm assuming that if we're trying to catch people on the way home, they'll be on this north side of Cherry Hinton Road, probably not in South area, but we won't take that.
Mr Woodburn, are you saying that you didn't get any response at all? We're told that a letter was sent to you, but we didn't see one. I didn't see one either.
I haven't seen that.
There we go. But no, I haven't seen any written response here. What it says, our notes say here that Joel Carey to respond to Mr Woodburn's question about when the 20 mile an hour speed limit will come into effect. On page 23 it says, Cherry Hinton Road, 11th of the 12th was the expected implementation date. Well, half of Cherry Hinton Road is at 20 miles an hour, because I saw it as I came down there. I don't come down there that often, but some of it is. But certainly it says that a response was sent, but I certainly haven't received it. So if you haven't either, then we'll do a bit of chasing up, shall we?
Chair, could I just check, is it Mr Carey who's responsible for expediting these 20 mile an hour orders? Because I was under the impression it was Mr John Richards.
I don't know.
It may be, that might be why an answer hasn't been forthcoming if it's not that gentleman's job.
But there's no response at all, so I would expect some sort of response to say, you know.
Yeah, I think it's John Richards.
Yeah, no response is not on. Please.
Yeah. I am Joel Carey, I'm the head of Streets and Open
Spaces.
And I do know that John Richards did respond to Mr Woodburn by email, because I was copied into the response. So I can certainly make sure it's reissued in case.
If you please, because I don't believe it reached me, but please reissue it.
John is a member of my team.
I see, right. Apologies.
That's all right.
He's been delegated for the city to do this.
Mr Woodburn, there is one positive answer I can give you. You did mention earlier about would Mr Campbell be here tonight. The person on your left is Mr Campbell. So we have got the stagecoach here. So we have got good news. It was 50-50 we've sorted just now.
Okay.
Well, Chair, as Mr Carey is here, could we ask him to give us an update on when we can get the 20 mile an hour implemented in
I
South
don't have the
area?
information to hand, I'm afraid. No.
We sort of communicated that, didn't we? Yeah. I guess as Council was saying, it's probably resource led as well, because the whole city, just about the whole city, apart from a spider's web full of roads, is not going to be 20 miles an hour. So I guess it's going to take some time. But your observation of having 20 miles an hour, so it's consistent, so everybody knows that it is a well-made one, and that seems to be the way forward in any case. It's just a matter of time. Yes, gentlemen.
Chairman, when is the next meeting of this committee going to be held?
I haven't got the date in front of me.
I think it's mid-April, Chair. It's certainly April.
Yeah, it will be April. Yeah, it'll be April. Yeah, it's going to be April sometime. I don't have these dates.
April the 18th.
Oh,
Chair,
well,
could I suggest that this item goes on the agenda of the next meeting and you call the relevant people to attend the meeting and give us a full report on what they've done and what they're proposing to do. And we have people here that write letters. Community Forum has a document that is written and sent to every household in Green Ediths. So we have a mechanism for telling everybody what is going on. And I think it's just a suggestion.
Yeah, quite happy. Yeah, quite happy with that. Also, the police will be here as well, so the enforcers will be here. So it will sort of dovetail quite nicely. I've got a couple of notes for the police representative on this line as well. So that would make perfect sense. Happy with that?
Thank you.
April 14th.
Yeah. 18th was it? Oh,
18th.
18th. Thank you. No other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Ah, Wendy. Oh yes, we're going to have this in the open forum, weren't we?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you. Just to respond, my name is Wendy Young, the Operations Manager. I'll be doing the environmental report later on. We thought for this committee we'd actually use the opportunity to introduce your new city ranger for the South area. So Edward Nugent, who's sitting here, has replaced John Caston. I'm not sure if all the members have met Ed before, but he's been working in the South area to get to know the previous work that's been undertaken. And I've asked Ed if he could just give a bit of information about himself and a really brief sort of update, just so you know what he's been working on in your areas. And if you have any questions, he's been sitting as well.
Well, hi, as been introduced, I'm Ed and I'm the new city ranger.
Can you stand up, please? Thank you, because otherwise...
So, yeah, I'm the new city ranger for Trumpington and Queen Ediths and Cherry Hinton, and I've been doing different work in the local area. A lot of it is trying to get different community groups involved and see what issues they face and how we can overcome them and work together to make our city, a better place. I've been working with Rebecca in Wolfston Way, in Nightingale Rec and Godwin Rec and Homerton Rec, how we can improve the benches, the environmental spaces in there, and just being all up to standard really. And I've also been doing a lot of large-scale litter picks in the chalk pits in Accordia and in Trumpington Meadows, as well as doing some apple tree planting as well. And there's lots of other projects we've got involved with, and so any other people who want to get involved and volunteer themselves, come and do some work, then you're more than welcome to come along. And if you've got any questions, then let me know.
I think you're working Colwell Road as well.
Colwell Road, yeah, we've been doing ward walkabouts.
Done a very good job there, I heard, the last few weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so we can come out and meet local residents and do ward walkabouts, and then you can highlight issues you've got, and then we can, work together to see how we can resolve them. So that's what I'm quite keen on doing, is working with local people.
Hey, can I ask, is there for the if you've got a direct number for the councillors can use?
I've got John McCaston's old number, so anyone used to be in contact with John McCaston,
that's fine, thank you.
I've got his number, and we can provide it after this meeting as well, anyone that doesn't have it.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Sorry, we sort of jumped over, but that really should fit into the environmental, but Wendy asked if I could just make that short introduction, because he's got to go home and look after his little one, so we said we'd put that there now. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
You can go look after the little ones now.
Yeah.
Thank you, good to meet you.
Chair, can I just make a point?
Yeah.
It needs to be stressed, though, that Ed as a ranger cannot fix all the problems.
Really?
At our recent Cherrington walkabout, people highlighted issues with manhole covers, paths that were deteriorating badly, and these come under the county auspices. So if you think Ed will come along with a tarmacking and do your path, the answer is no. He needs to report it back to the county. So it needs to be just pointed out that Ed does a marvellous job in his remit, which he's responsible for, but there are areas which he's not responsible for, so please be careful when you say, in a sense, why hasn't this been done? But I'm sure Ed politely will point out what's under his remit. I'd just like to stress he's not responsible for all the problems in our areas, but what he is responsible for, he has been making a great job, so I'll endorse that. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, free and clear. In that case, then that takes us to item 6. which is in the capable hands or somewhat of Andy Campbell. That's from Stagecoach. It's very nice of you to come and take the time to come here, Andy. I know you're asked to come to a lot of meetings. I'm sorry, I don't know your colleague's name. Tom Waterhouse. Tom Waterhouse, okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to speak to us today. It's very kind of you. I know we all have busy working days. It is very much appreciated. You've responded to what we've asked you to do, so thank you for that. And so what I'm going to ask is, at the moment, if there are any specific questions that the public would like to ask the gentleman from Stagecoach. If so, what I would do is we'll just take a quick note of those questions. So rather than have a bat and ball game, we'll take a quick note of those questions, and then at the end of that, as has become our custom at South Area, and then if you gentlemen would like to respond to those questions, and in that way you'll probably get a much better idea of what people want, and then we can come back for a wash up after that. Please.
I'd just like to follow up on what I mentioned in the context of traffic flows, which is that when the buses have to stop and take money, the driver turning from driver to conductor for a considerable amount of time, it really does create a backlog of traffic on Hills Road. So we either need to have conductors or some sort of swipe system, I think. Don't really mind which.
Please.
Yes, I'm concerned about the problem of buses, stationary buses running their engines and the way this contributes to pollution. The greatest area of pollution in the city, which is miles above the legal limits, is of course the Drummer Street area and Short Street. And if you go there, you'll see that as soon as buses begin to load, they start the engines. Now, of course, all the passengers are in their outdoor clothing, and if anything, they're going to be too hot, and there's absolutely no need for the buses to be heated by having their engines put on before they depart. And it seems to me that in the 5 minutes or whatever the length of period it is that it takes for them to load, that it is ridiculous that they have their engines running. And you have the drivers, some drivers in their shirt sleeves, but all the passengers in their outdoor clothing. Why are the drivers not properly attired? And why are the engines not left off until the bus departs? Point one. Now, of course, this applies to taxis too. I've been walking along taxi ranks recently, and roughly 50% of the taxis sit there with their engines running, contributing to the pollution in the city.
With respect, Mr. Campbell can't do a lot about that.
No, I know, but I simply raise it. I raise it because I don't want to say that I'm blaming buses alone.
Sure.
But I do think it's a general problem. Stationary vehicles with their engines running.
Gentleman at the back.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We've just answered our own question.
Yeah, please, Ms. Carter.
Yep. It's something that happens really year on year when we get more and more tourists coming in. I don't know whether it's a Stagecoach issue or whether it's something that now is going to fall within kind of like the Cambridge bid team, but I wondered if there are any plans for, if I can call them kind of like traffic guides, where you've got major bus stops to point people as to which of the buses to get on, just to answer questions, because again, I think the points several people have made about drivers moving from driver mode to bus conductor mode to try and explain to tourists or people not familiar with buses, you know, which is the right bus to get on to get to the railway station, for example, is something that I overhear regularly coming up. Also on the Cttee 3 bus, there was an item in the paper recently about I think Cambridgeshire being one of the counties that has the fewest proportion of people using swimming pools. I only recently discovered that the Cttee 3 bus stops almost just outside the Abbey swimming pool, and I just wondered whether for the buses that do stop outside the swimming pool, almost as the destination, they could say Abbey Swimming Pool, rather than, I think it's the White Hill Estates that it currently says, just to say to people, look, there is a swimming pool here where the bus stops right outside, and it's incredibly convenient to go literally from point to point to the swimming pool and back. You know, something that's cost effective, but is kind of like free advertising for the swimming pool.
Any more, ladies and gentlemen, before we turn to councillors? Going once, going twice. Gone. George, right at the end there.
It's about the buses. In the morning, you see the buses going from Allentown to the city centre, and they are full. Later on, in the rest of the day, it's a massive bus with 1 or 2 people inside, and they are blocking off all the roads and generating the pollution. In the evening, they are getting busy. Is there a mechanism where, during peak times, we can have the big buses, and the not so busy times, to have smaller buses, like minibuses, which are more efficient, less pollution, and have a mixture of vehicles rather than just one size, and a massive vehicle carrying 1 or 2 passengers?
Tim.
I still get reports of people with visual disability who look as if they are capable of seeing. They can see the shape of the bus coming, but they can't read the number. They stop the bus, they hail it, I don't know how they do that, with a hand. And then they get abused from the bus conductor because they've stopped the wrong bus. They can't see the number. It's well worth reminding bus conductors about that, or bus drivers. And we still get the occasional refusal of helping dogs, dog assistants onto buses. Again, these people don't look as if they're necessarily disabled. And that's more of a taxi problem, that particular one. Thank you.
I realise you are probably limited in what you're able to say as an investigation in progress, but can you update us on how far the investigation regarding the bus incident has got? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
The guided bus incident.
It's a bit crap on the guided bus.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Well, that's under investigation. So
I realise that at this point in time, we're not much you can say, but there is some information to the public we do to clarify.
Yeah, just got Councillor Lefter next door, then you're next.
Okay, my question is going to be very simple. How difficult or how costly is it to add a little bus stops at some areas? I mean, not a massive bus stop, just one of those signs for people to just bus stops, pick people up and then go, because people are moving. Some areas we are having more constructions now, more houses or whatever. Those areas there are lots of lack of bus stops, so they have to move to the next bus stop or where the first available one. I've been asked if it's possible to have little signs say bus stop, people stop, bus comes like that. I don't know if it's difficult, expensive.
What sort of area are we talking about?
Trumping kind of more areas. There's a lot of housing and all that is over.
So what you're saying is
it difficult to add, or how costly it's going to be
we've
to
got
add?
some of response here.
So,
Right, okay, that's fine. We'll come back to it. Mark.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. A few points. One, consultation regards the election of bus services, particularly a few years ago in Cherryington. You make the note, Cherryington has 2 10-minute services, but one of them actually stopped running around one of the major estates, Colville Road. When we spoke to you about that, you weren't interested in listening to the regards of the sheltered scheme housing that you used to cover around, and other people on that estate who were getting aged and infirmed. And we were told bluntly, really, they've only got 100 yards farther to walk, so what's the problem? What we said was, we realise you have to make a profit. You're not a charitable service. So we weren't asking you to carry on running a 10-minute service or a 20-minute service. What we said was, couldn't consideration be given to actually having 1 hour run round that estate? So those people who are infirmed, who struggle walking, would know that 1 hour would actually go around to pick those people up. And it was said then, we make the decisions, and we've actually made that decision and we're deleting it, and that's the end of it. So the consultation, I think, would do very good if you could speak to residents when you're considering getting rid of services. And like I say, I know you have to make a profit, and if you can turn around and say, the reason we can't run round there is we only pick 3 people up, so it costs us a fortune. Secondly, running in convoy. I think one of the most frustrating things is when we see the buses running in convoy, 2 or 3 behind one another. I mean, in the old days I could understand that because there was no method of talking to the drivers to sort it out. But nowadays all your buses are actually linked by, shall we say, mobile phones or communications. So I can't see a reason why you can't actually say, because you're tracking them, because the bus stops tell you when the bus is arriving, why you can't say to one of these buses, Luke, turn round and start again. Because what happens is you end up with 3 buses running together and they all have to stop behind one another. So the first bus picks everybody up, but the other 2 buses don't pick anybody up and they all move on again. So what should be a 10-minute service becomes a 30-minute service sometimes. Again, the other one was looking at the way that the routes are run as well. I mean, nowadays, everybody from Cherry Hinton has to go near enough around Addenbrooks to get into town. What about running a service that went back past the Beehive? All the other bus services you run to the Tesco Superstore on Yarrow Road, yet there's no service really that runs down to the Beehive. So you could have more of an express service that ran down by the Beehive and into the city centre. That could actually maybe speed up things as well, because you won't have as many people waiting for the bus that has to go around Addenbrooks. So again, as I said before, you have to make a profit, and that's what you're here to do, and your shareholders demand that profit. But I think we could work hand in hand and still deliver a profit, but also give a service to the people who use the buses.
Amanda?
Thank you, Chair. I want to say thank you for coming to talk to us tonight. There's a lot of ideas there. Councillor Crawford and I are county councillors, and just wondering if you can tell us how things have been in relation to recent changes in the environment with park and ride and floating bus stops. And if you could comment on that, and also say if there's anything that the council could be doing to make life easier for bus operation, so that we can all serve the public.
I thought we were done there, please.
Brief one. What would be the chances of having slightly earlier and slightly later buses that are running from Bayram Road or from Trumpington into Addenbrooks to help those people who actually are on shift duty, to make sure that they're going to be picked up and safely delivered to their cars? I think it would help an awful lot of people. Thank you.
Okay. I'll make that 10 questions, albeit Mark's 8 with 3 subtexts on it. Okay. So I've got a note of them all. Are you okay there? Well, I guess between us we can pick up the question. Okay, the first one I've got is about the traffic flows, swipe cards, contact cards. That's where that's my first one. Yeah. Okay. So please just go through and make your own.
Okay. In terms of contactless cards, we have contactless cards, the smart card. We've been trialling that for 2 years now, and
It didn't look like it was turned on, Andy. Perhaps it was switched to the bottom. Okay.
I'll shout.
Use this one if not.
No, I'll shout you, all right. Thank you, is that better? That's my me. Anyway, we have contactless cards.
Keep trying.
Stagecoach smart cards.
There we
go. Stagecoach smart cards, we've been running those for 2 years. Initially, what we tried to do was to get everybody to buy the weekly ticket, the 4-weekly ticket, and the extra, which is effectively a recurring payment that you pay each month. We managed to get around about 35% of weekly tickets sold online. What we've done recently is we've moved the smart card to on bus as well, and I accept that you have to buy it once a week to get on the bus. We now at 98% of weekly tickets are sold on smart cards. So we are moving in that direction. We are trying to get that the way you want it to be. And we're also trialling a system for mobile phone, which I think would be even more popular once we get that done. In terms of stationary buses with engines running and causing pollution, the majority of our buses are now set up so they switch off within a 5-minute period. I think the majority of my customers would disagree with you if I didn't have heating on the bus, because I do get complaints if the heating isn't working. I think the bigger problem in terms of pollution is the fact that you can't get out of the city centre. And at times leading up to Christmas, it can take us an hour to get from the city centre railway station to Adam Brooks. Now, that's not something that we want to do. We want to be able to get out of the city centre as quickly as possible. And I think some of the changes that have taken place, the Catholic Church Junction, I know there's a lot of cycle helmets here, so I'll probably be looking to get out alive. But the 6-second delay on the lights doesn't do us any favours in terms of congestion. The removal of the yellow box doesn't do us any favours. You've got an extra set of traffic lights for the railway stations. In fact, I think you've got 2 now, because I think you've got a pedestrian line as well. You've got a cycle path that, in my view, is dangerous, because cars have to go across it to turn left. And you've now introduced floating bus stops and cycle lanes, and I mean, if you want to go out after this meeting and have a look at it, I cannot believe whoever has designed that has left half the previous cycle path in and reduced the road space down to 6 metres. There was no reason whatsoever why you needed to do that. There was already space to put the cycle path, and it should have been put next to the pavement. That would have given you more road space, and that would have stopped the congestion. And it hasn't. It's made it worse, and when you've done the other side, it'll be even worse still.
Information points, I think I've got.
In terms of drivers not being in proper clothing, drivers do have to wear the uniform, and if they don't wear the uniform, then they are disciplined. The fact that it's nice and warm in the cab is probably a good thing from their point of view. They spend up to 10 hours in there, and you don't really want to be driving a bus in a big coat. We work with the City Council in terms of traffic guides. We have the ambassadors that get all the information that are required. The Tourist Information Centre actually sell tickets for us and hand out guides and also promote city sightseeing. But if you want to know which bus to catch, the majority of my staff will give you all the information that you need. So we do everything we can to try and assist in that. The City 3 stop outside the swimming pool, we have to work by the regulations that are set for us in terms of the bus industry, and what we have to put on the destination is the final destination. So unless the swimming baths is the final stop en route, then we're not allowed to show that as the destination.
It's near as, damn it, the final bus stop on.
Unfortunately, the Traffic Commissioner doesn't accept near as damn it here. The final stop on the route. Yeah, buses are full in the morning and buses are full in the afternoon. To buy a bus costs around about the same as buying an Aston Martin, which is about 150,000. I know which I'd rather have, but and unfortunately, if you're going to buy 150,000 worth of bus and then 100,000 worth of smaller bus, then you're increasing your costs quite significantly, and that's why we have one vehicle that copes with what is the maximum capacity. Visually disabled passengers, I have some sympathy with this because my wife is partially sighted and has similar sorts of problems. If there are any instances where one of my drivers is rude to a customer in this particular instance, then please let me have the details. I would say that 90% of my staff do a damn good job, and we spend a lot of time training them. Unfortunately, when you employ 1,000 people, you sometimes get a few that let the side down. So if you can identify who they are, believe me, Tom will deal with them. The update on the guided bus incident, I can tell you that the vehicle, which was only a few months old, was not at fault. I can also tell you that the track and the infrastructure is not at fault. The driver has been dismissed from his position, but he has the right of 2 further appeals. So I can't go into the details of it because I am the second level of appeal and I don't know the details of it until it gets through to me. But I do know that in the first instance the driver
Sorry, I missed your last point. Could you repeat? Somebody coughed and I missed what you said.
It was in terms of the guided busway.
Yep.
There was nothing wrong with the vehicle,
Yep.
nothing wrong with the infrastructure. The driver has been dismissed, but there is a 2-stage appeal within our procedures. And until that's fully gone through, I don't know what the final outcome will be.
Thank you.
But I can assure you that the busway is safe and we have less accidents on the busway than other forms of public transport. And if you want to compare the number of incidents on the busway to the number of incidents on the A14 for the same stretch of road, you'll see there's a significant difference. I think what you were referring to was adding another stop, is a temporary stop while a bus stop is out of use. Did I understand that correctly?
No, it's just getting more crowded. I mean, we're going to have more people moving to Trumpington.
Right.
In some areas there was no bus stop at all. And people, they were asking if it's possible to have one sunset bus stops instead of walking to the next one, which is a bit miles, not miles away, a couple of roads away.
Usually what happens in terms of developments is the county council, when it goes to planning permission, recommend that there is a bus stop every 400 metres. So if you've got a specific instance, then we'll talk to the county about whether there's an additional bus stop to put in. Sometimes it's not possible because it depends on the safety and whether there's a suitable place to put it. But we're certainly willing to look at anything.
Consultation.
Oh yes, it's my lack of consultation. Bit harsh, I thought, to be fair. One of the reasons we had to make the changes to the city group, again this won't be popular, was the introduction of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. What we had to do when that was put forward, we had to assess whether we could keep the same level of frequency, keep the same route, and still achieve what we were doing with the same resource. Because at the end of the day, if we have to put more resource in, we have to increase the fares. So we looked at what we could do and we made a number of changes. The 1 and the 2 no longer go through Bridge Street and we shortened the mileage. The 3, what we had to do was split one end of it to give a 20-minute. And the particular section that you're talking about, we tend to get delays, particularly at school times when everybody parks for the primary school. And when you're running a frequent service, you can't actually just run one in a different route within the hour without putting some extra resource in. So let's say it takes 45 minutes to go around. if once an hour it takes an hour to go round, then you've just disrupted the whole frequency of the service. And that's why we didn't do it. We did say that there was a suitable stop, although we did ask whether it was possible to have that stop improved at the end of the Gimel. But at the end of the day, I have to make decisions. Whenever we make a change, it's not going to be popular. I could consult, I could do what the County Council are doing with the City deal and spend 2 years consulting and not coming up with anything. But you know, I'm running a business, and yet sometimes I have to make decisions that are not popular.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, buses running together. They do run together, and there's been a study in my hometown of Leeds University, and they tell you why buses run together, and that is that if the first one gets delayed, like you said, he ends up picking up the passengers of the second one doesn't pick people up, so he catches up to the first one, and so on. Buses do overtake each other, and we do have a control room that look at the real-time information and then reallocate the buses and slot them back in where they can. But in most cases, they have to complete the length of the route, because you can't suddenly throw people off at the railway station and send it back to town. Service, it's 2 hourly. It used to be hourly. It used to be supported as a tendered service by the local authority. And when the financial crisis hit and they withdrew funding, then we tried to run it as a commercial entity. I have to say, it's probably not covering its direct costs, and it could be in danger in the future because of that. Because we have to be able to cover the direct costs of each individual service, otherwise we get criticised by what was the OFT and is now whatever
Something
it is now.
different.
Yeah. So we have to do that. So there is a service, but admittedly not a great one. In terms of floating bus stops, you may have read in the Cambridge News that I wasn't a particular fan. I still aren't, particularly for partially sighted, because I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the elderly. It's not comfortable for people having to wait on an island. And I think that the decisions that have been taken, particularly in Hills Road, have made the situation worse in terms of congestion and traffic delays. But in terms of the worst decision ever made, I would say that was the park and ride. We lost 500,000 customer journeys a year from the decision to charge for parking cars. I don't believe that we've lost all those customers because of a pound charge. I believe it's the complicated, ridiculous ticket machines that you've got to be a Cambridge don to understand. Every time I go to a park and ride site and use that machine, somebody comes up to me and says, "Can you help me to do this?" I think it's ludicrous. We were told there would be a 5% reduction in passengers, and that would come back. And in the first year, we were told that we didn't have to pay departure charges because we used to pay to the county council for the upkeep of the sites. In the second year, we agreed that there would be a sliding scale, so if the customers came back, we wouldn't pay departure charges. I've now been told that from April, we need to pay departure charges. So what was a profitable services is no longer. I've suggested to the county council that rather than charge me the old system of the departure charge and keep the pound charge, that I would rather put the fares up significantly and pay the county council, let's say 50p for every adult fare payer. They're still getting the money, The customers will then hopefully come back to use Park and Ride because you're not putting them off with this silly parking machine. And I've also suggested that if we've got a financial crisis, then let's have a look at what we can do to actually reduce the costs. I mean, when all this started, I did say that we would man the sites and do everything for nothing, because I thought we would have a greater loss than 5%. I didn't think it'd be 14%. My view is a Park and Ride site, if you go there in the morning, commuters park the car, get on the bus and go to work, and come back on an evening, get out of the bus and go to the car. So rather than have 2 people per site per day, why don't you just open the site from 9 till 6, where you get visitors, non-regular users, and then save a significant amount of your manpower costs, and that way, those 2 things together, I think, would cover the costs of operation. Sorry to bang on that, just a bit of a hobby horse.
Thank you very much. I think we're on the same hobby horse, aren't we?
Changes to earlier and later buses. We have, in the past, run the Trumpington Park and Ride, the Baberham Park and Ride, the Milton Park and Ride, through 11:30. And the numbers were 2 and 3 per journey. I suppose when you look at Park and Ride, if you go in, I use Park and Ride when I go in at a weekend, or I use it during the week. If I go, on the odd occasion, I take my wife out, I actually drive into town on an evening because it's cheaper and easier to do that. So we're prepared to look at anything, but it wouldn't cover the additional operating costs.
Can we do a consultation with adults and people who use that service at earlier and later times?
Well, we meet with Adam Brooks on a regular basis. We have done some additional things where we've extended some services. Originally, I think Park and Ride was 7:30, and then we've moved it to sort of 8:30ish. We've also been asked to do the R service, which goes from Trumpington to the railway station and back again. Not quite got to break even yet. And again, I think that runs through about 8:30 at night. But if you've got some specifics where people need a particular journey, or if Adam Brooks come up with that during our discussions, we're certainly willing to look at it.
I'm happy to put it through to them, and we've got a daily UK that comes through. We can ask people what their needs are. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for all that. That's exactly what I had, so we matched up with our questions. As far as I could see, perhaps Mark might want to come back on a couple of items, and maybe Amanda to respond on that full response you gave to the county. Did you want to say anything else, Mark?
Well, it was nice to hear that you do consultation, because my question was, you don't do consultation, but now you pointed out you do consult, so that's nice, that's an improvement. And I still believe that where you've got a bus service that served, like I say, a sheltered housing scheme and an estate with elderly people on, that there's no reason why you couldn't use the brains that we have nowadays to say, I'm sure we could put some kind of service. Those people won't want to have a service at peak hours, so the question about taking 45 minutes because of the school rush hours, you could say, no, we won't do it until 10 o'clock if you wanted. So you could say the bus service would be 10 o'clock and then run it round when it's a quieter time. And those people then who do suffer would have a bus service. So I think there are ways we could still improve and still meet your criteria of not using more resources.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Amanda, did you have any?
I'd just like to say thank you for your full response to the floating bus stops and to the Park and Ride charges. They're both things which we expressed reservations about, certainly within my group at the time.
So did we.
It seems that this area of Trumpington and Unum have become the Park and Rides rather than the places which were built at great expense for them. But thank you also for your constructive ideas about how things still might be patched. and that's very helpful. And although I didn't support these schemes, you know, I apologise on behalf of the County Council for all the grief.
I'm not sure there will be patch, to be fair. It's very difficult when somebody has made a public decision to say, I think I got that wrong and here's a better way of doing it. And the discussions we've had so far are not filled with a great deal of optimism.
I don't really want to start another round of questions, because we've already done that.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to say thank you.
yeah, that's just what I was sort of going to do. If there's anything absolutely burning and specific you wish to ask the gentleman, that's fine, but I don't want to start another round of questions. Was there anything else?
I had a quick question, because I remember the reason the county council was trying to introduce, to put a pound charge in the Beverham area was because by 9 o'clock all the hospital workers parked their cars there for free and went to work. Now they assume that once they introduce the pound charge, only the genuine people will actually use the parking facility. Have we seen, since you introduced the charge, has there been any change, or is it still the same to the best?
I think what happened was that they actually built additional parking spaces to be able to cope with that. Again, I think there's a better way of dealing with it. I think there's an area of the Baber Park and Ride site that could have been designated to Adam Brooks workers, and I think there could have been a system developed with a pass that you put on your windscreen, that the Adam Brooks workers pay the pound in a different way. So you still get revenue coming in for the council, and the people who are using it and not using the bus would do that. And I would say that if anybody does have any other questions afterwards that they think of, I wouldn't really want my email address going to every member of the public, but certainly to councillors if you feel that anything else you want to add.
Just a quick final point, and this stems from observations, Andy, from your responses and also questions from all of the councillors. Something seems to come up here where, in terms of our systems and processes at a local authority level, we're getting our systems, processes and structures very, very badly wrong. And I think Mr. Campbell has raised just how much of a problem it's causing him as a bus operator, and also how it's not having a knock-on impact on us, the general public. So, for example, with the Trumpington case, is there something about the forward planning that the city and the county councils do to give perhaps Mr. Campbell more time or more notice of when new bus services are going to be coming in? So, for example, if you've got a large development of social housing coming in where you're likely to have more people dependent on buses, would that help him forward plan? Would it help him and his staff advise on the designs of future development to make it easier for his drivers to to drive their buses? For example, with the CB1 estate and the rising bollards by the railway station, it's a nightmare for the drivers there, and I look at it time and time again and think that's just really bad design. It could be fixed, but for whatever reason it's not being done. Ditto with the box junction at Hills Road by the big Catholic church. I was at the county council raising that as a public question, saying what how do we go about getting that box junction back in? I haven't had any substantive response from that, so Mr. Campbell can't get a response as the person who runs the bus services in the city. What hopes do residents have?
So what you're actually saying then is that a better tie-up between those who are doing the planning officers, ourselves, and the public transport system, while these plans are actually still on the table.
Yeah, so for example, that's
not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, for example, do you get the drivers involved?
I think, to be fair, usually when it's a new housing development, we are asked at an early stage, usually by the developer, because they need a solution as part of the planning process. And, you know, I don't want to come across as being totally critical of the county council, because it was once held up as the model, the partnership model, and the best in the UK. I think, unfortunately, my blunt Yorkshire approach can sometimes come across as a little bit negative and can upset some people. And I think there are some people that feel that the county council should not be supporting a commercial organisation like Stagecoach. I think, unfortunately, those that think that are missing the point, because the more that we can do from a commercial basis, the less drain on the public purse that is required for the gaps that are left. So I'm quite willing to work with anybody, and even if you take Cttee deal, for instance, I tend to find out about the schemes when they're being drawn up and decided upon. And then if I say that I'm not sure that's going to work, and if you take the Western Orbital is the latest one where I've questioned whether it would be commercially viable, connecting Madingley Road with Trumpington Park and Ryde coming down the M11. Yes, you might fill a bus at peak time, people working at Addenbrooks and coming back in the afternoon. Who else is going to use it? That was seen as me being negative about a Cttee deal proposal. I even started to question myself, which is very unusual. I contacted my colleagues around the UK to see if anybody else within Stagecoach operated a commercial orbital bus route, and none of them do unless it connects to another town or city.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's a good point, well made though, and there's no reason why we shouldn't explore that a little further. How far that will go, I don't know, but we'll certainly have a look at that. It's a good point. Thank you, gentlemen, both, for taking time to come today. If there are any other questions, we'll do as you suggest and we'll email them directly to you. But thank you for taking the time, and I think, if not all, because I haven't spoken to everyone, but I think most of us agree on the floating bus stop, that's for sure. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll take a 5 minutes before item 7, which will be Wendy's the environmental. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.